Good morning, I'm Diana Macedo. We're coming on the air with a major development in the search for Nancy Guthrie, the mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. ABC News has confirmed law enforcement is releasing new images of a possible subject in Nancy's disappearance. Authorities believe the 84-year-old was taken from her home.
84 years old Nancy Guthrie, mother of Today anchor Savannah Guthrie, had spent the evening of her disappearance at her oldest daughter Annie's home in Tucson, Arizona. By all accounts, it was an ordinary family night. Dinner, games, and laughter. The house at Annie's, just 4 miles from Nancy's own residence, had seen this pattern many times before. Around 9:45 p.m., a family member drove Nancy back to her home, and then she just vanished. But the mystery doesn't end here. FBI found Nancy Guthrie's phone signal 200 miles away. But you see, Nancy could not walk 50 yards without assistance. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. At Nancy's house, the garage door opened and closed around 9:45 p.m., confirming her arrival. Whatever happened next occurred inside, without witnesses, without confirmed surveillance, and without any public explanation of the hours that followed. Her home would soon become the center of one of the most confounding disappearances in recent memory. The first unusual detail came at 2:30 a.m., when Nancy's pacemaker disconnected from her iPhone. A pacemaker paired with a smartphone continuously communicates heart rhythm data to the device, tracking vitals in real time. When that connection drops, one of two things has usually happened. Either the phone moved out of range while the pacemaker stayed with the person, or something disrupted the pacemaker itself. Law enforcement confirmed the 2:30 a.m. disconnect, but did not disclose which explanation accounted for it. This was a critical timestamp. This was when the ordinary night at Nancy Guthrie's home began to unravel. Then came the phone signal. At approximately 6 a.m., a device associated with Nancy generated a location signal that placed it 200 miles from her home. To grasp the scale of that distance, Tucson sits near the southern edge of Arizona. Drive 200 miles south, and you are deep into Mexico, past Nogales and into Sonora. Travel north, and you approach Phoenix, one of the largest metropolitan areas in the American Southwest. Westward leads toward Yuma and the California border. Eastward, you reach New Mexico. Every direction points somewhere significant, and every possibility raises urgent questions about who moved, how quickly, and why. Law enforcement has remained silent on this phone signal. The FBI and Puma County Sheriff's Department have not confirmed details, leaving investigators and the public to speculate based on fragmentary reports. Contrast this with other information that has been released. Nancy's blood on the front porch, doorbell footage showing a masked figure approaching her home, searches of the septic tank, and a vehicle removed from the garage, and the brief detention and subsequent release of a man south of Tucson named Carlos Palazzo, who lives near the Mexican border. Each confirmed detail paints a picture of intense investigation, but every unanswered question has multiplied the tension. Who knew Nancy's garage code? What about the business card that appeared on her front door? How had gloves left behind at a nearby road ended up 2 miles from her home? What had law enforcement found during multiple sweeps of her residence and her daughter's home? And above all, what exactly explained the 200-mile jump of Nancy's phone? Savannah Guthrie became the public face of the search almost immediately, stepping away from Olympic coverage to focus entirely on finding her 84-year-old mother. Her withdrawal underscored the urgency of the situation. In repeated video appeals, she asked anyone with information to come forward and told the person responsible it was never too late to do the right thing. The FBI reinforced that urgency by announcing a $50,000 reward for information, while billboards carrying Nancy Guthrie's photo appeared across major Southwest cities, including Houston, El Paso, San Diego, Los Angeles, San Antonio, Dallas, and Albuquerque, to reach travelers across major highway corridors. Investigators focused intensely on a short but critical timeline from the early hours of February 1st. At approximately 2:30 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker disconnected from her phone, suggesting sudden separation, power loss, or interruption. Roughly 3.5 hours later, at about 6 a.m., her phone was detected nearly 200 miles from her Tucson home. The distance and speed implied rapid vehicle movement or the possibility that the phone had been intentionally separated and transported elsewhere. At the residence, evidence pointed toward deliberate action. Authorities confirmed signs of forced entry and identified blood on the porch as Nancy's. Combined with doorbell footage showing a masked person approaching the house, investigators concluded the incident was planned rather than spontaneous. As the investigation expanded, thousands of tips arrived, and search efforts stretched across multiple jurisdictions. Yet, the central puzzle remains incomplete. Investigators hold timestamps, physical evidence, and digital signals, but the sequence connecting them is still missing. Between 2:30 a.m. and 6 a.m., the known timeline breaks. And within that gap lies the unanswered question of what happened to Nancy Guthrie. What should we make of the phone signal? What should we make of the phone signal? Well, the investigators are dealing with three stark possibilities. The first scenario is the most immediate and alarming. Someone moved Nancy, or at least her phone, extremely fast. Covering 200 miles in roughly 3.5 hours requires a vehicle, planning, and logistical awareness. This suggests a premeditated operation. Whoever was responsible knew what they were doing, had a route mapped out, and anticipated the early morning hours when traffic is light and the streets are quiet. The second scenario is equally unnerving. The phone could have been separated intentionally from Nancy, carried away as a decoy to mislead authorities. In this case, the 200-mile signal doesn't track her movements at all. It tracks a calculated misdirection. That requires sophistication and planning. Whoever executed this had the foresight to anticipate digital tracking, creating a false trail, while the real target, or Nancy herself, was elsewhere. The law enforcement might not just be chasing one person. They may be dealing with a carefully orchestrated puzzle. The third scenario is the one law enforcement has never addressed publicly. Investigators may already know what happened, but are withholding details for operational reasons. Silence in federal and local investigations is sometimes strategic. When the FBI and Puma County Sheriff's Department control what is revealed, it can protect ongoing operations, preserve leads, or prevent tipping off suspects. Retired Police Sergeant Troy Hillman estimated that the public likely knows only 25% of what investigators actually possess. If this phone signal falls within the undisclosed 75%, it could be critical, but without confirmation, the public is left in suspense. In any case, experts note that mobile devices are highly reliable indicators of movement, especially when paired with a medical device like a pacemaker. Investigative complications. The night of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance was ordinary at first. By 9:45 p.m., she had returned home from her daughter Annie's residence in Tucson, Arizona, about 4 miles away. The garage door opened and closed. After that, the house went quiet. But in the early hours, events began to unfold that would challenge investigators and grip the public in suspense. The first major clue came from Nancy's Google Nest doorbell. Initially thought to be inaccessible, because Nancy had not purchased cloud storage, the footage was eventually recovered 9 days later using federal resources. What it revealed was startling. At approximately 1:47 a.m., a figure approached the front door. The person wore a ski mask, dark clothing, gloves, and a zip-up fleece. A backpack, already full, rested on their back. A holstered firearm was visible at the hip. The figure did not move with the confidence of a professional. Rather than disabling the camera or using a proper tool, they improvised, repositioning a nearby plant in a futile attempt to block the lens. Experts analyzing the footage noted that the mask was thin enough that facial features, including apparent facial hair and eye characteristics, were partially visible under night vision. Even the holster was a universal foam design rather than a custom tactical model. But they had come prepared. Retired homicide detective Phil Waters noted that the figure's actions were very odd. inconsistent with someone experienced in covert operations. Law enforcement was left grappling with whether this was the same person who had taken Nancy or merely someone connected in a different capacity. The camera captured the figure's movements, yet many operational questions remained unanswered. How did they know the garage code? How much prior knowledge did they have of the property? Complicating matters further were the ransom notes. Interestingly, these notes went to media outlets. TMZ and Tucson station KGUN both received communications outlining a demand: $6 million in Bitcoin by 5 p.m. Mountain Time on February 9th. Whoever sent these notes wanted visibility, recognition, perhaps even to broadcast fear, rather than simply extract cash. Then came the Bitcoin transaction itself. In a perplexing twist, $300 appeared in the designated wallet after the footage was released, a minuscule fraction of the $6 million demanded. Analysts speculated this could have been a test to see if the wallet was being monitored. It was unclear whether the deposit came from the original sender of the ransom notes, a secondary actor, or someone entirely unrelated. The timing and amount left investigators with more questions than answers. Was someone experimenting? Was someone else inserting themselves into the crisis? Following the release of the Nest footage, multiple law enforcement units were mobilized in Tucson. SWAT teams with armored Bearcat vehicles moved toward undisclosed locations. Bomb squad units were dispatched, suggesting a concern for explosives or other hazardous materials. Most notably, the FBI's hostage rescue team arrived in Tucson. The HRT is deployed only for the most serious situations: active kidnappings, armed standoffs, or terror threats. That level of response is extraordinary for a case described publicly as a missing person investigation. A man named Carlos Palazzo was detained during a traffic stop south of Tucson, near Rio Rico, Arizona, approximately an hour from Nancy's home and close to the Mexican border. Law enforcement executed search warrants, entering his home, seizing electronics, and showing his mother-in-law images from the doorbell footage. She said that the masked figure was not her son-in-law. Palazzo was released without arrest or charges. Retired Detective Phil Waters emphasized that executing a search warrant requires judicial approval based on probable cause. Something connected Palazzo to the investigation, though the details were never made public. Whether his proximity to the border was significant or coincidental remains unknown. But Nancy Guthrie remains missing. Her family, the FBI, and local law enforcement continue to navigate the tangled realities of this case. The extraordinary complications that have emerged, the improvised masked figure, the media-focused ransom, the cryptic Bitcoin deposit, and the high-level tactical response, all paint a picture that is at once thrilling, alarming, and entirely grounded in the factual record. But wait, there's more. The Mexico connection. The FBI is also considering the possibility that Nancy Guthrie may have been taken across the U.S.-Mexico border. It is a possibility, not a confirmation, but the step itself is telling. Agents have contacted federal law enforcement partners in Mexico and asked that the case be circulated among local police agencies, effectively pushing the search beyond U.S. jurisdiction and into international territory. Despite the widening scope, there is no confirmed evidence that Nancy crossed the border. Investigators have already reviewed Border Patrol camera systems and examined electronic data for signs that she was transported into Mexico. So far, nothing definitive has surfaced. That absence of evidence has not closed the door. Instead, it has complicated the timeline. If Nancy was moved to Mexico, investigators believe it likely did not happen immediately after the kidnapping. That suggests a chilling possibility: a delay, a holding period, or a staged sequence of movements before any international transport. At the same time, a parallel thread has been unfolding in the background. TMZ reports receiving multiple emails from the same individual demanding Bitcoin in exchange for information about Nancy's location. The messages repeatedly reference Mexico. In one email, the sender warned the outlet to be prepared to go international. In another, the person claimed to have seen Nancy south of the border and wrote, I know what I saw 5 days ago south of the border, and I was told to shut up, so I know who he is, and that was definitely Nancy with them. The messages have escalated in tone. One of the most recent ransom notes even included a demand for cryptocurrency and a graphic description of what would happen if the ransom were not paid. Law enforcement has made clear that these communications are being taken seriously. Whether they are genuine leads, opportunistic hoaxes, or attempts to insert false narratives into the case remains unknown. But the timing has intensified the pressure on investigators. Moreover, crossing the border undetected would require planning, coordination, and timing. Yet investigators have not found evidence in border surveillance systems or electronic tracking that confirms such a crossing. Behind the scenes, the widening investigation suggests a shift in mindset. Missing person cases are often geographically focused in their earliest stages. Expanding beyond national borders is not routine. It happens when investigators believe the facts justify the move. For the public, the emerging picture is both stark and unresolved. A masked figure captured on video. A disappearance on February 1st. A trail of ransom messages referencing Mexico. A search now stretching beyond the United States. And yet, no confirmed proof of an international crossing. What remains clear is that the investigation is no longer confined to a single city or even a single country. Then there's a series of messages that continue to arrive with demands and warnings. Whether those messages point toward the truth or simply muddy the waters is a question investigators are still racing to answer. There has also been speculation about it being an inside job. The agencies addressed that as well. Nancy Guthrie's family cleared as possible suspects. As the search entered its third week, investigators announced that Nancy Guthrie's family had been formally cleared as suspects. The Pima County Sheriff's Office said the family had been nothing but cooperative and gracious, and described them as victims, not persons of interest. Sheriff Chris Nanos later explained the unusually direct statement was necessary because people had begun attacking the innocent on social media. His message was blunt and emotional. Kindness matters, and defending victims is part of every officer's duty. In fact, the FBI has narrowed the suspect's description: a man between 5 feet 9 inches and 5 feet 10 inches tall, roughly 175 to 177 centimeters, with an average build. Investigators believe the mask and backpack seen in the footage were purchased at Walmart, prompting authorities to begin contacting stores and reviewing surveillance footage from nearby locations to identify possible buyers. That search for retail purchase data highlights how investigators are tracing every detail, no matter how small, to reconstruct the suspect's path before and after the abduction. Meanwhile, a glove was found about 2 miles, or 3.2 kilometers, from Nancy's home. The glove appeared to match those worn by the suspect in the doorbell footage. DNA extracted from it was submitted to CODIS, the FBI's National Offender DNA database. The result was both disappointing and revealing. There were no matches. The unknown male DNA profile did not correspond to any known offender in the system. Yet Sheriff Nanos emphasized this was not a setback. DNA, he said, could still play a crucial role as investigators expand their search into other databases and emerging techniques like investigative genetic genealogy. That glove was not the only one recovered. Authorities collected multiple gloves from the surrounding area, many of which turned out to have been discarded by volunteers searching for Nancy. Even so, investigators remain confident that forensic evidence will eventually help narrow the suspect pool. The scale of the search has grown enormously. Hundreds of officers, helicopters, sniffer dogs, and specialized units have been deployed. Authorities say they have received nearly 40,000 tips from the public. Each tip must be logged, assessed, and either pursued or ruled out, creating a vast investigative workload that continues to expand daily. At one point, investigators executed a search warrant at a residence just 2 miles from Nancy's home. The search ended without arrests, but it demonstrated how close investigators believe the answers may be. Sheriff Nanos has repeatedly stated his belief that Nancy was the victim of a targeted kidnapping and may still be held somewhere close to Tucson. He expressed confidence that investigators would find her, whether it took 10 days, 10 months, or worse. Law enforcement has also begun using advanced technology to try to locate Nancy through her medical device. Sources say investigators deployed a signal sniffer, a specialized device mounted on a helicopter, to search for signals from her pacemaker. The technology can detect and track certain electronic transmissions, offering a potential way to narrow search areas. Officials have warned that Nancy requires regular medication and is not in good physical health, raising concerns about her safety with each passing day. Throughout the investigation, Nancy's children have remained publicly vocal. Savannah Guthrie has released multiple video appeals addressing whoever may be responsible, urging them to come forward and do the right thing. Her message has remained consistent. The family still has hope. They have repeatedly said they are willing to pay for Nancy's safe return. Authorities have also increased the reward for information. What began as a $50,000 offer was doubled to $100,000 and then tripled further to $30,000. Despite the enormous effort, no suspects have been named. The investigation continues to expand, fueled by tens of thousands of tips, forensic analysis, and new technology. And at the center of it all, the 84-year-old woman remains missing, and the search to bring her home is still far from over. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.